Welcome everyone in this new video tutorial about the multiplayer combat editor. In this video we're going to learn how to use the global combat modifier. So what is this? This is a built-in feature, the combat manager and the modifiers. More the modifiers. You can actually apply global combat modifier through modifiers. And what do they do? They modify the amount of damage taken or dealt depending on conditions we can set up. So first off, we're going to create our first global combat modifier by right clicking, creating a new blueprint class and searching for global. And we have something called global damage modifier. We want that. And this is going to be, for instance, BP global combat modifier, GCM backstab, let's say. So this means we're going to use. Why would we need global combat modifier with all the stuff we already have, modifying the stat, etc. Well, maybe you have a rule on top of every other stuff you can do in your game that says you deal more damage from behind, you deal more damage if you're afar, you deal more damage if you're close, you deal more damage to undeads or orcs or whatever, you take less damage from magical attacks, or I don't know what. Taking less damage from magical attacks will be a resistance modifier if you have a resistance system in your game. So global combat modifier might be overlapping with some of the other features, but they also enable some new stuff you cannot do. So if you wonder how can I do this, I don't seem to understand how can I do something, how can I modify the damage I deal or take this way. If you don't know, maybe global combat modifier are the way to go. So first off, we're going to open up backstab. And first thing you can set is by clicking on the class default and going on the top, on the right panel, you have on the detail panel, you have something called offensive modifier. If you check that box, backstab is going to be called, GCM backstab is going to be called when you deal damage. And if you don't check that box, GCM backstab is going to be called when you receive damage. So in our case, we want to say that, for instance, our rogue character is going to learn the talent backstab. So it's going to be an offensive modifier, which modifies the damage if you are behind the target, for instance. And for that, you need to override a function named return damage modifier. And in this function, you can get rid of the orange node. This function is being called when the target deals damage, in our case, since we check the box, and it will be called when the target takes damage if you uncheck the box. And the value we return here are the value modifying the damage. If we set 10 here, it's going to increase the damage dealt by 10 when that function is being called, and it's being called whenever you deal damage. So any damage you deal are going to be increased by 10 if you say that. And if you say that, all damage you deal are going to be increased by 100%, or 200%, 300%, etc. So for now, we're just going to say that it's going to increase the damage you deal by 300%, just so we can properly see that this damage modifier has been applied. And we are going to apply that. So how do we apply this? We're going to build up a simple logic in our third-person character that simulate the fact that we learn the talent. So for instance, if we say when we press the P key, we're going to run an event on server which says server learn talent. And it's going to be an event run on server, and it's going to call network add network modifier. Like this. And the target is going to be ourselves. And when we press the P key, we're going to learn the talents. And what talent we are going to learn? We are going to learn the CM backstab, but actually we need to learn a modifier. In here we need to add a modifier, and we created a global combat modifier, and global combat modifier are just one tool used by modifiers. So we need to create the modifier backstab. So we're going to create a new blueprint class called from out of BP modifier, which is going to be BP talents backstab. We're going to open that up, and on begin play, we're going to add a new global combat modifier. So this is how you can add combat modifier through modifiers. In here, we are in a modifier, but maybe you are building up, I don't know, a passive skill. Let's imagine that we are for instance, let's say we are setting up our how does it set up passive effects? Let's say we are setting up the passive effects of a skill. You could be saying, I want to add a global combat modifier. So global combat modifier are tied to modifiers. Whenever you have a reference to a modifier, you can add a global combat modifier. And in this video, we are doing it through the networked modifier feature, but you could be adding it through a status or, like I was showing you, a passive skill. But in our case, I created a talent called backstab, and backstab is actually adding the global combat modifier backstab to the target of the talent, like this. So the third person character is going to learn the backstab talent when he presses P. And in our case, I'm going to deal 40 damage, and if I press P, I'm going to deal a lot of damage. Actually, multiplied by 4 since I added 300%, like this. So, but we want to set up our global combat modifier in a way that makes it so we only deal more damage if we are behind our target. And how can we do this? You can extract the information from the damage result. You have a lot of information: the amount of damage, the gameplay tags passed, the hit result, which contains the hit actor, which is the target you dealt damage to, the source of the damage. It can be your character, but it can be a trap or a projectile or whatever. The owner is the combat manager responsible for dealing damage, and the extra multiplier, which is a feature which you might check on the other videos. So in our case, we want to check if our target is in angle of our other targets. So first, we are just going to check if the source of the damage and the hit actor are looking at each other. Actually, I'm not sure what, I don't remember what numbers I'm supposed to type in there. So I'm just going to increase the damage by 30%, and I'm going to print the angle when I'm asking for 90. And I'm going to say that actually I'm going to reduce the damage dealt just so I can hit a lot of time and have a lot of information. So I'm going to need to press P, and it's printing false, and it's printing true, but it's not reducing. Okay, I need to do something like this to reduce the amount of damage dealt. Plus P. So it's returning true when I'm behind the target, false when I'm there, true, true, false. So I hit the right number the first time, but I'm not sure how you can set this up. So I said 90 degrees, which means all the why does it work all in every... Why does it work? I'm not that good in math, so it's working. But if I'm saying, for instance, 45 degree, P plus, it's false there, it's true there, it's true here, and it's true there, true here, false there. Okay, so, and if I'm saying, so 45 means it's false. Okay, so I think I got it. If I'm saying it's going to be only left side or right side plus P, it's going to be true, false, false, and false. Okay, so 135 is behind right, 90 is behind, 45 is left, 0 is left and right. It's not the most convenient way of doing stuff, but it's not the most convenient way of doing this, but at least we have a simple logic going on, and we have a function we can play around. So we are going to say that we only increase the damage if we are behind our targets. So this means if I'm in angle 90 degree, I'm going to say I double the damage you deal. I double the damage you deal, else I do nothing. And in our case, when we hit play, P plus, if I'm behind the guy, I'm doing 83 damage, and I'm in front of the other player, I'm doing 41 damage. So the global combat modifier works, but there are many things you can do. You could be saying get distance, not that one. Get distance from... how do we do already? Get distance to the other actor, and if the distance is, for instance, I don't know, greater than 200, 2000, you're going to increase the damage. So you've basically learned a talent that says you deal more damage from afar, or you could be saying something like this, which says you deal more damage at close range. Or you could be saying, does the actor has tag undead, for instance, or any other built-in feature, built-in Unreal feature. So this is all the things you could be doing with the global combat modifier feature. It's going to wrap up the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.